Glad to have you as you're coming in. Want to give everybody just a chance to get in and get settled. And if you will, take a moment, use the chat box and introduce yourself and tell us where you are watching from. And we'll get started in just a moment. We had to make a promise between Wendell and I that we would not talk about fishing. Um, we often talk about fishing. We often talk about sports. And we are not going to talk about either one of those, Krista. We're going to talk about something to have to do with business. And I'm going to let you kind of get started with the first set of questions, and then we'll just rotate back and forth.
Perfect. Well, I like this topic much more than fishing, so I'll just be honest about that. So Wendell, one of the first things I want to ask you about is what are some of the challenges that you're seeing that local governments are facing right now?
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. I think we're seeing this across all verticals, but there's a talent shortage, skills gap, based off the disparity between what employers need and what employees bring to the table or candidates bring to the table. But there's the hard to fill positions as well, finance, engineering, anything in the utility space. And so this is where the particular service comes into play, and it's been highly successful, not because of anything we do, but because we have some very proactive leaders in our space, or our peers, and our interim candidates or interim professionals that actually, they feel the need to give back, and they're very seasoned. So very fortunate to be in this role.
Wendell, talk a little bit about for an organization that decides they want to use interim or another expression of our interim services. What's the big benefit for an organization to go this route?
Yeah, so we actually have staff augmentation has been around for years, and y'all know that my path through city management was through the IT space, and so I just reflect back in the early '90s where we were trying to implement complex systems, and so there was a need for staff augmentation to bring those necessary skill sets that we need to deliver on these projects. So it's the same here. We have three different service models. There's the interim staffing, which is more for prolonged engagements. And that's when this is a proactive engagement to help address the leadership need for a voluntary and involuntary separation. And then there's this on-demand staffing where our clients reach out, they have a particular project, they only need an individual for maybe, 40 hours for the week or what have you, or for the month. And so we're able to provide a highly skilled professional to help fill that need. And then the third component or the third service is embedded or fractionalized services. And we've been in that space for quite some time, actually. And so that's where you actually, our contracts are very flexible. You engage a subject matter expert on a retainer for a defined period of time. It could be 40 hours per month or 20 hours a week, whatever that may be. And so that's really benefits our clients.
Great.
Wendell, I'm curious. So when an organization reaches out and says, "Hey, I'm in need of, an interim or an embedded service," how does that selection work for the interims?
Yeah, so we have several. Our candidate pool is up to about 600 now. Majority of our candidates are retirees, so they're very seasoned. And so what we do is we actually do an intake with the clients to make sure that we understand all the different challenges and their needs. And so based off that intake, we go back and start to source candidates. And so as we source candidates, we want to make sure that we're very transparent with any pressing issues or challenges that the organization may be encountered within the organization. And then we present 2 to 3 candidates to the clients and set up and facilitate a virtual interview.
What's the typical length of an interim assignment? How long would somebody be in this kind of a position?
Yeah, on the interim assignment, Mike, we usually tell our interim professionals to expect to be on site anywhere between 90 to 120 days. If they're doing a recruitment with SGR, our recruitments typically take about 90 days, so it's really turnkey. And one of the benefits about that, doing a recruitment and an interim placement in a recruitment, is that there's a smooth transition, a smooth handoff, because your interim professional is having conversations with the city management team and the recruiter to make sure that we're all aligned before they pass the baton off. On the on-demand staffing, we recently placed a client or a professional with a client, and that individual was on site for 4 days. They had a high need for project, and so the interim professional was on site and was able to help the client wrap up, and then he's on to his next assignment.
Wendell, I know that there are probably people out there wondering this, and I am as well, but does the situation ever occur where an organization has an interim and then they offer like permanent placement or a permanent hire to that interim?
Yes, Krista, sometimes we're a victim of our own success sometimes, and so that's not necessarily bad. We love it whenever we make those type of placements, and I think right now we're hovering around anywhere between a 28 to 30% temp to hire placement rate. And so what all we ask is that we ask that our interim professionals have that conversation with us first internally, and then we have that conversation with the client to make sure that everyone is aligned and making sure that in terms of transition, have a firm transition plan. And then also, if we've got a recruiter working on a particular recruitment, it also gives the recruiter a heads up that, hey, we have an internal candidate. Very, very focused on the overall candidate and client experience. So we just want to make sure we're all in communication.
Wendell, sometimes I compare you to like a Wall Street stockbroker. You're the deal maker. That phone's ringing all the time. You're talking to somebody. How long does it take usually to get an interim professional placed?
All right, Mike, I can give you an example. If you go ahead and blink for me, you just missed it. We already got someone placed. We move more of a frantic pace. I always say on the executive recruitment, that's more of a long term. It's more like a marathon. For us, it's a sprint, right? Because you have clients that are in need of some leadership really quick. And so on average, if we present candidates, interview, and get contracts finalized, I can have someone on site anywhere between 7 to 10 business days. But we've also we've been very fortunate. Our quickest placements to date is underneath 30 minutes. So that's moving pretty quickly.
That is moving fast.
That's record speed, I would think. Wendell, when an interim is working with the city, are they an employee of the city during that interim period?
No, they're actually 1099s.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and ask because I think it kind of relates to that. But Emily asked, how do you support retired interim candidates navigating state pension working restrictions?
yeah, so that's a great question. Typically, unfortunately, we always defer our interim professionals to talk with their tax advisor and make sure, because each state pension requirements are totally different. So we always encourage them to meet with those tax professionals.
So when we are in the process, we place somebody as an interim. Are they paid by the city, the organization, or are they paid by SGR? How's that work, Wendell?
So our interim professionals, they're supplied with a timesheet. They track that, and so they submit that timesheet to their supervisor. We make sure that our clients review those timesheets and sign off and approve. And then those timesheets are sent over to SGR, and we actually process payroll.
Okay.
Sorry. And Wendell, is that how often is the interim paid, and is it like on an hourly basis, or how does that work, the structure?
Yeah, so on the interim side, it is it's paid biweekly, and so we process payroll, biweekly on that side. And so our interim professionals are responsible for their own taxing, so we do not handle that portion of it. So they'd be responsible, once again, working with their tax professionals to allocate those funds toward taxes.
That reminds me, I was participating not long ago in a firefighter's retirement ceremony, and they read some reviews from his early part of his career. They asked him, "What do you like most about your job?" And he said, "Every other Friday." And then they asked him, what in this review, as a young star, and then what do you like least about your job? And he said, "The other Fridays." So that, I think all of us can relate to that. I'm sure even interims do. So talk about insurance. Are they covered under liability? EO, cyber, workman compensation? What's the insurance packages there?
Yeah, so that's one of the primary questions that we get asked by our clients and also the interim professionals. And so all of our 1099s are covered underneath our general liability, professional liability policy. And then we also have cybersecurity. And
Mhm.
so we want to make sure each year we go out and work with our broker to make sure that we have adequate coverages.
Very good.
And what about, because Jennifer asked this, and I think you kind of touched on it, Wendell, but just to make sure, she said, do you offer benefits to the interim professionals, or can the employer that you place them with provide benefits to the interim?
So with SGR, once again, you're covered underneath those policies that we have covered, and very seldom we haven't had those type of benefits extended on behalf of the clients to the 1099 professionals. So no.
What about like health, retirement, those type of benefits?
No, currently we do not offer that right now.
Okay. Also, when an organization is looking to bring on an interim, do they interview with multiple, or do you make the recommendation like this is the interim? Or, like how does that process work?
No, that's another great question. So it's all about mutual fit. So we want to make sure we present 2 to 3 candidates for the clients to interview. And once again, when you're dealing with the interim professional, these are all retirees, so they're not active job seekers. And so you're always competing with trips to Europe, grandbabies, what have you. So we want to make sure that it's a warm, inviting experience because they have a lot to give back and they want to give back. And so yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, very good. Wendell, talk a little bit about success stories. Like when you think about what's been some of the really successful placements, what are some stories that come to your mind from that?
Yeah. Oh man. So trying to pick through. So been very fortunate. We've done several hundred of these placements. I do know that we've had some organizations that have been in pinch, especially around budget season, auditing season. And one year we were able to put together a team of highly qualified finance professionals in a community. I think we had 4 finance professionals to help really come in and wrap up a budget, complete audit. They were behind, I believe, maybe 3 years. And so, man, and you want to talk about a team that worked together cohesively and worked together to make sure that our clients were taken care of. They've done a phenomenal job. One other story that comes to mind is that, one of the reasons I really love this is that I have the opportunity to walk on people, in their next chapter in life and their seasons in life. And so I get phone calls quite often from retirees contemplating their next move. And so some of these individuals are really they're ready to relocate to another, region or part of the country. And so I've been fortunate to help relocate 2 or 3 individuals just based off their interim experience, going in serving as leader. They fell in love with the community, and so they actually relocated. So
With 600 people to draw from, it's okay for a city to think outside the box and think, wow, we got a real problem here, or here's a special need. Let's reach out to Wendell, and you're right there with them, coming up with great solutions. And I love that about what you do. And we don't talk about it enough about the kind of unusual experiences that we get to be a part of because of your work there. So I love that, and I appreciate how you do that.
thanks, Mike.
And I think that some of what you said already, touched on this subject, Wendell, but does it happen often or ever, I guess, where an interim is with the city and the project changes or evolves, or there's a different need, and how does that work?
Yeah. And so first and foremost, we want to make sure our clients are taken care of. And so those particular situations, if we're having those frequent check-ins with the client and also on our interim placements, we want to make sure that everyone's aligned. And so in those particular cases, if there's a skills gap, and I'll just use finance, for example, you may have someone that's strong in budgeting, but they may be not so much on the accounting side. So if that is the case, we have those conversations to see if there's any type of supplemental resources or another SME that we need to add to the fold and mix. So yes, and I think Mike made this comment earlier. It's just making sure that you understand what the client's needs are and making sure that, we have the SMEs on our bench, which we frequently do, to make sure that we're able to take care of those needs.
I want to ask one more kind of follow-up question to that, Wendell, but is there ever a situation where maybe an organization calls you and they're not really sure what they need, and you can kind of guide them, on whether interim or fractionalized or recruitment maybe is the best option for them in their situation?
Yeah, and so we understand that budgets can be tight. And one thing that I always make sure, I always encourage our clients to have maybe a work plan. They've identified their needs, they've identified their skills gap. And so that way, when we go back and we start trying to put together a package of solution, our agreements are very flexible, number one. And so you may not need someone for 40 hours. You may only need someone, on a retainer monthly. And so based off those conversations that we have with our clients, then we guide them into what type of service model or services they need or for that approach.
Talk a little bit more about fractionalized employees. We're hearing so much about it, but what are the type situations and what are the kind of organizations that you're seeing leaning into or exploring fractionalized employees?
Yeah. So as we've had, like I mentioned before, we've got a few long-term contracts that are on the fractionalized side. For example, there's communities that use this for example. They're not ready to hire a full-time position just yet, right? They're still in that growth phase, and so we're able to deploy whether it's a virtual or a fractionalized CFO, CIO, or CTO to provide and help with that high-level strategic. Because usually they have people that on staff, or our clients have resources on staff to execute, but maybe not on the strategic side. And so in some cases, what we've done, or a few cases, we've had a long-term contract where we provided website support services for our clients, but also city secretary services, where we actually have someone coming in, attending council meetings virtually, and doing agenda minutes and prep. And so it's been highly successful.
Yeah, we talked earlier. I'm doing a lot of work with cities that are kind of on the growth edge. And it seems to me that that's one of the groups that could really benefit from this because they need expertise, they need help, but they're not, maybe that revenue hadn't caught up yet. And fractionalized employees for those growing cities could be a really good way to go.
Wendell, I know, again, I keep kind of going back, so I apologize for that, but we have some really good questions here. And Emily's asked another great question, so I want to touch on this because I think it's important. But whenever you're placing an interim, she's assuming, and so am I, that that could be, somebody who doesn't live in that area, or even in that state. And so when that happens, how does that work with like housing, travel? What is the arrangement there?
So we usually try, as it relates to I'll refer to it as our fee schedule, we try to keep things budget neutral. And so we take the incumbent's fully loaded salary, we divide that by 2080 based off that 40-hour annual work week. And we use that as a baseline for the hourly rate that we charge clients. And as it relates to housing and travel, and so what we consider commuting distance is 50 miles or less. In that particular case, we don't have anyone in commuting distance, then we do ask our clients to provide some type of temporary housing. And so what I recommend, if it's going to be a 90 to 120-day engagement, then a hotel usually works. But we have some of our professionals on assignment for 12 plus months. And so you probably want to look at maybe an Airbnb or an apartment of some sort, because there's cost savings there for those long-term rentals. As it relates to travel, we typically ask for up to 4 trips home per month if they're within the local area. But if they're having to fly back home, we usually ask for up to 2 trips home per month. So all that's very flexible and negotiable.
Wendell, you said earlier that our contracts are very flexible, but what happens if somebody signs a contract with you and then they find their permanent person sooner than they thought, or they can't find it and need to extend? How does that handled with your team?
Yeah, so there's a provision in our contract. We typically ask for 14-day advance notice on behalf of the client, or either the interim professional advance notice of their intent to terminate the contract. Now, we've had cases where we placed an interim and they want to hire the interim within a week, but that's a different case. But if there is a need where they've hired a permanent position, it's totally fine. We just want to help them out in their time of need. So we typically negotiate the exit, and then as long as they've got the right resources to continue with their operations, we're fully satisfied and happy for them.
Great.
Wendell, I'm curious, are we at SGR looking for more interim professionals right now, or are we not at that point right now?
We're always recruiting. And so once again, if if you're contemplating retirement or you're just bored, hey, give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about, how you can help back and give back to the profession. Once again, this is why we're very fortunate to have a very talented candidate pool that just want to give back. And so I love it.
That's awesome.
So Jeff is asking why we're not talking about sports, and I just kind of want to point out that the Cowboys are undefeated in 2025, as are my beloved Baylor Bears. But that's all I'm going to say about that. And, what I really want to know, though, is if the city or organization does want someone to be a permanent employee, what's the process that takes place from there?
Yeah, so there's a placement fee provision in the contract. And so what would happen, we would have those conversations with the candidate and client as far as, hey, once again, there's a mutual fit. And so if they do hire that individual or into that permanent role, then the client would pay the placement fee, and that would terminate the contract. Now, that fee is waived if SGR is conducting the permanent recruitment for that particular position, then we waive that fee.
I have a question, Wendell. I might be catching you off guard a little bit with this one, but you knew I was going to try, so here I go. Where do you see this going? Do you think that the interim management will continue to grow, like more people utilize that service? Do you think the fractionalized employment or embedded services, where do you see the future of this specific business line?
Yeah, Krista, here it's going to continue to flourish. And in fact, I have a number of conversations weekly from clients just reaching out. I mean, they may not be ready to utilize our service. Once again, I love working with progressive leadership, those progressive minds saying, hey, we don't quite need the service just yet, but we do know we have some upcoming retirements coming, or we've got, they may have a succession plan. But if you don't have the bodies to fill that succession plan, then you need to have an alternate plan. And so I see this service really taking off. Once again, the interim management services for prolonged engagements, but on-demand staffing, when you have a project need, what have you, we can deploy someone pretty quickly to you. And then the fractionalized services, it's here and it's going to continue to grow.
Awesome. And I'm assuming that if an organization doesn't, if they're in a place where they don't have like a well-designed succession plan, or they're not sure what their skills or needs gap is, we can help them with that as well.
Yes, that's in our toolbox as well, and part of our expertise. And you bring up a valid point, because this is sometimes when organizations reach out, they may have an emerging leader or that next leader. And so they will actually pair that individual with one of our interim professionals as a mentor coach, and allow that individual to learn and to help transition into their new leadership role.
Yeah, wow. So I love of course I do, live, eat, breathe this stuff, but I love how, you can really see like the organizational development, leadership development that aligns with the interim services and the consulting and the embedded. So hopefully that means that we're able to provide great solutions for customers.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Chris. It's a good time to point out, our purpose is to help local governments be more successful through recruiting, whether that's short-term or long-term, assessing, having to do with lots of different applications of that, but assessing your succession plan, your talent pool, and developing innovative, collaborative, authentic leaders. And we really, all three of our business lines, executive recruitment, interim consulting, embedded services, as well as organizational development, we work well together, hopefully in helping cities be more successful, because that's why we exist. So when we're about out of time, but talk a little bit about worst case scenario. And then you can maybe go on to anything else you want to add. But what happens if, in spite of all of our best efforts, it's just not a good fit and it's just not working out? Talk us through that part.
Yeah, the first thing I do, Mike, go back. I may call you up to come in if we're in a pinch to help save the day. But thankfully, we've been in very fortunate situations, but where we play some of the best candidates. But if that was to happen, once again, our obligations to our clients and to make sure that they're taken care of. So if that's the case, what we would do is go back and source candidates and present some alternates. No fee, there's no additional fees for that. And then allow that, those interim professionals be interviewed by our clients, just to make sure there's the right fit. And so that's why we say having our, frequent check-ins, setting clear expectations up front between, the interim professional and the clients. It does a wonder. I mean, worlds of wonder for them to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Krista, any last questions or comments you want to share with Wendell or for Wendell?
I always love hearing from Wendell and love learning about this. I feel like especially the embedded and fractionalized services, just so much benefit there to an organization. So I love that we're able to do that for cities and counties all over the nation. And Wendell's so good at it, and you can see the passion when he speaks about it. So, or hear the passion, I guess, when he speaks about it. So Wendell, I'm so thankful that you joined us today.
All right. Thank you all. So, yeah, if you're in doubt, just give us a shout. We'll help you figure it out. And so look forward to potentially speaking to some of you. Thank you.
That was a really cool rhyme, Wendell. If you're in doubt, give us a shout. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I won't quit my day job though. Okay.
Wendell, I do want to say how much I appreciate your leadership. We benefit from it internally at SGR. You bring a positivity, a can-do, will-do spirit, and I just appreciate and am excited when I know that same thing is being provided for cities. And so thanks for taking the time to be with us, and thanks for what you and your team do. You and Troy do a phenomenal job. And thank you, Krista, for being with us, and Lisa, and the part of your work in the background. Everybody has been a part of this one. We want to say to you, have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week. And the next webinar will be Micah Gaudet, that's going to be talking more about AI and how we use it in local government. It's becoming a bigger and bigger topic every month, and I hope you'll join us for that. So have a great day, and we'll see you down the road.
Thank you.